Is it possible to really meet the risen Jesus? If you find that hard to believe, don't worry, you're in good company. A guy called Saul from the city of Tarsus ought to know. This guy used to chase Christians down and throw them in jail. He definitely did not believe in this wild cult, spreading dangerous rumours about some rabbi rising from the dead. And yet years later, after a name change, the same guy wrote, "If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. If our hope in Christ is only for this life, we are more to be pitied than anyone in the world." Why does it seem like he's not too worried as he says this? Something must have happened. Saul met the risen Jesus for himself, and that changed everything. This is the big reason the whole Jesus movement took off 2,000 years ago. It's because his followers, who saw him die a brutal death and his lifeless body placed in a tomb, saw him alive with their own eyes over a period of 40 days, talking to them, eating with them, teaching them. This group passed their stories on, which were eventually written down. Some saw him in a garden, others walking along a road, some inside a locked room, others while they were out fishing. At one point, he appeared to a crowd of over 500 people. As the Apostle John wrote, "We proclaim to you the one who existed from the beginning, whom we have heard and seen. We saw him with our own eyes and touched him with our own hands. The one who is life itself was revealed to us, and we have seen him." Now here's the thing. That first generation of believers, hundreds of courageous men, women, and children, all suffered intense persecution and death rather than deny the truth they had witnessed. Have you ever stopped to think, why? As they were being led off into the Roman arena to be eaten alive by lions, if they saw nothing or experienced nothing, why not blurt out, "Wait, it was all a scam. I'm sorry. We made it up. Please don't kill me." But they didn't. They preferred to go to their deaths, singing hymns, by the way, than deny what they had seen with their eyes and touched with their hands. Doesn't that make you think, hang on, something must have happened here? That's because something did. One skeptic who didn't believe this whole resurrection thing was a guy called Thomas. Thomas is an easy guy to pick on, but his story is great because it's actually a mirror of ourselves. In chapter 20 of the Gospel of John, it reads, "Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, 'We've seen the Lord.' But he said to them, 'Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe.' A week later, his disciples were in the house again and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them, as you do, and he said, 'Peace be with you.'" Just pause for a minute. How many of us have locked doors when it comes to God or religion? Maybe you've had bad experiences of church, prayers not answered. Maybe you've had wounds from your past. For Thomas, it was the limitation of his rational mind. He just couldn't get past not having the hard evidence in front of him. Now, no matter what your locked doors are, the good news is that they're no hindrance to Jesus showing up. "Put your finger here," Jesus said. "See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." And Thomas knelt and said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus almost turns to camera and looks down the lens for this next line. I love this. And he says, "Because you have seen me, you've believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Who's Jesus talking to here? He's talking to you. He's talking to me 2,000 years later, when just like Thomas, our faith is struggling or non-existent, and it's hard to feel like God is even real. Jesus is looking ahead through the pages of history and speaking to you right now as you listen to this. Blessed are you who won't see me with your physical eyes, but will see me with the eyes of your soul, the eyes of the Spirit. Blessed are you. Is something not real just because it's not visible? Not at all. Love is real. Truth is real. Courage is real. Faith gives us eyes to see the deepest, truest realities of life. And the existence of God is right up there with them. I also love that Jesus meets Thomas where he's at, doubts and all. In the same way, God already knows your doubts and he loves you with them all. Faith is a journey, guys. If Jesus has to walk through walls to prove himself to you, he will. But maybe you need to start by being honest and naming what your locked doors to faith are. I promise he'll meet you there. For me as a young man, my main blockage to experiencing Jesus was simply lack of exposure. I hadn't read the New Testament for myself yet, so my faith was at a very infantile stage. And that worked for me because it meant that I didn't have to take God too seriously. I could continue to just keep drinking and partying and have a nominal Sunday Catholic vibe. Someone who had good values was still in charge of my own life. Pretty much, I didn't want God being a killjoy and interfering with my life. As I started to read the Bible for myself though, a deep stirring began inside my heart. I'd never read such powerful, stirring, uncompromising words before. It's like the purity of the man and his message began piercing my walls. What would it look like if I took Jesus seriously? Along with this, I had a Christian flatmate who was a positive example of someone whose life was being led by Christ, and I was inspired by him. Eventually, my mate's witness and the words of Jesus combined like a cocktail of curiosity. I want what he's got. That's the door Jesus entered through for me to experience him in a risen, real way. Through the love and friendship of a flatmate and the words of the New Testament. Very ordinary, but very real. Sort of like Thomas. Put your hands in here. Before we wrap up, I just want to talk about 3 blockages to experiencing the risen Jesus. The first one, doubt. As I said already, you're in good company here. Starting with the Apostle Thomas, right through to the 20th century Oxford professor C.S. Lewis, who after years of intellectual reasoning described himself as the most dejected and reluctant convert in all of England. Think of doubt like a midwife to faith. Unexplored will only leave you where you already are. Doubt that's surrendered and explored, however, can give birth to something new and amazing. The great thing about C.S. Lewis is that he kept his mind open. He read widely and talked about it with believing friends, like his good mate, J.R.R. Tolkien. Without this, we would never have had the Narnia Chronicles, and the literary world would never have known who Aslan the Lion was. Great things come from doubt explored. The second blockage is fear. If God is real, what will he do to me? What will I have to change? This was my issue. Again, you're in great company here. Imagine being Mary with an angel rocking up saying, "Hey Mary, guess what? You're going to become an unwed pregnant teenager." Woo! What the angel said to Mary, he says to you. Don't be afraid. Fear has to do with a lack of trust. But if God is love, you can trust him. Lower your fear. God's not out to harm you. He's out to heal you. And finally, third blockage to experiencing the risen Jesus is sin. Hey, when you're enjoying rolling in the mud, you don't want someone telling you to stop having fun? The reality, however, is sin, which simply means doing anything contrary to the law of love, separates us from God. Why? Because God is love. This is the reason Jesus came, to deal with the sin blockage in our hearts and reconnect us to God's love. Believing that Jesus rose 2,000 years ago and is alive today can seem like a big ask. I get it. At the end of the day though, I reckon it comes down to who will you choose to listen to? The honest fisherman who lived and walked with the carpenter for 3 years, who slept in fields with him and ate with him? Or the jealous religious leaders who wanted to cover the whole story up and felt so threatened they got him killed in the first place? Would you trust his own mother, who watched him die with her own eyes? Or the brave 21st century atheists who weren't there and have no skin in the game? Why trust those who are so hostile and vehemently opposed to such a beautiful message instead of those whose lives were radically transformed and changed the world for the better because of it? I'm listening to C.S. Lewis. I'm listening to Mother Teresa. I'm listening to Francis of Assisi, Paul of Tarsus, Mary Magdalene, and Doubting Thomas. There's a saying, the truth is like a lion. You don't need to defend it. Set it free and it will defend itself. So have a think about the voices you're listening to. Now let me encourage you, like I did, to make sure that Jesus' own words get a chance to speak for themselves. In the next video, we're going to talk about what to do if you want to meet the risen Jesus for yourself. I'll see you there.